Welcome back to Big Country Politics on KTAB.
Well, hello and welcome to this week's Sunday Conversation here on Big Country Politics. I'm Manny Diaz. This week, our special guest, the one and only Dr. Paul Fabrizio, professor of political science at McMurray University. I feel like we need the Chicago Bulls intro like that. And now.
No, we don't. We don't.
It's always so good. Dr. Paul, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Well, in the last week and change, we've seen quite a bit, certainly in the political landscape. Probably earlier this month or the tail end of July, we saw, Donald Trump endorse Stan Lambert. And then just last week, Stan Lambert announced his retirement as a House representative representing District 72 here.
71.
71. That's
make sure.
That's where I go back between Abilene and San Angelo. We have Drew Darby over there. So District 71 nonetheless. We're going to talk about, this race because this race is going to be it's getting a little hot, But tell me about was that a shock to you to hear that Stan Lambert was just going to ride off into the sunset after this election?
It wasn't a shock. There'd been questions about it ever since he had his last race. And in the last race against Liz Case, he won, but he only won 52 to 48%. And because it was so close, it raised questions about his ability to continue to represent the district. Mm-hmm. So, therefore, when you think about it, you also realize that he's past retirement age for a lot of people. I believe he's in his 70s now. You have to think at some point he's going to give it up. So when is that going to be? Mm-hmm. And so that last race was a tough race for him. And he won. And then he chose this is the time to ride out in the sunset.
Yeah.
So he leaves an interesting legacy, and it's a lesson about whether his type of republicanism, conservative republicanism, is what this district actually wants. And so if I can talk about that for a second.
Absolutely.
He represented the kind of Republican conservative who cared deeply about the local issues. He knew about the school system. He had ties to the business community. He worked with local government. So he understood the local players. His focus was on local issues. Liz Case, who ran against him, was coming from the perspective that no, there's larger issues that we have to focus on. And she, the woke agenda, that sort of thing. She was specifically interested in the culture of life and all that. So she represented a different kind of conservative Republican. Stan Lambert, I think, won because of his ties to the local community. But is that what voters want? And as he steps away, we're going to see if that continues in this next race.
Conversations that I've had with people here in Abilene and San Angelo and throughout West Texas, they say it's like, well, once you get to, you can have the most conservative values, as a candidate, but it's like when you go to Austin, they become rhinos,
Yes.
The mix of the Republican and Democrat like that. But is that necessarily a bad thing? Because they do have to cross lines and work across the aisle in elements like that. Or how have you entertained that conversation?
See, this is the hard thing. This is why there's a civil war going on. Uh-huh. What should be the right attitude? Republicans control state politics. So should you do everything in your power to achieve what you want to achieve, running over the opposition, or should you work with the opposition because some of the rules require you to work with the opposition? And what we've seen in recent years is a gradual migration over to the idea that you run over the opposition. Dan Patrick, as the lieutenant governor, has run over the opposition in the Texas Senate. the Texas Senate Democrats are basically powerless. In the House of Representatives, there has been this idea that you need to work with the Democrats to try to achieve things because you need their votes on certain things like passing the budget, for example.
Sure.
So there's been accommodation made. But the current Speaker of the House has started to move in the Dan Patrick direction. And you notice in the special sessions that have taken place this summer, there's been more and more of a crackdown on Democratic behavior. And they're assessing them fines for when they broke quorum and headed off to Chicago, that sort of stuff. And they're talking about raising those penalties, denying Democrats chairmanships of committees, subcommittees, that kind of stuff. So what we're seeing is gradually this top-down approach where if you're an elected representative who's a Republican, you must obey Republican leadership. That's what we're going to. And that might be difficult if your focus is solely on local issues and you want to do right for your community. Sometimes what's right for your community might not be right by the by the Republican leadership, which is looking at the whole state.
Sure. All right, we're going to step aside for a quick commercial break. When we come back, more with Dr. Paul Fabrizio as we discuss the race. We kind of unpack some of the candidates, if you will. It is a at the moment, very highly contested race with a number of candidates. That and more right here in Big Country Politics.
Welcome back to Big Country Politics on KTAB.
Nothing against these other candidates that are new to politics, but three names that kind of come to mind: Jay Hardaway, Blaze Reagan, and Liz Case. Liz Case primarily because she challenged Stan Lambert in the last election and was very, very close to actually taking that seat, winning that seat there. You know, when you look at those three right there, what comes to mind? You know, does anyone have an advantage over the other at this point where there's, no fundraising, no anything, just on notoriety? Does there anyone that kind of really sticks out at this moment?
Liz Case, obviously, as the one who nearly won a couple years ago, she would have to be, I don't know if the front runner is the right word, but she would have the advantage because she would probably be the best known. Blaze Reagan, city councilman, you would think he's well known. One of the things I always enjoy talking about with candidates is when they start going out and campaigning for a different office, how many people have heard of them? And they go, a lot of people don't know who I am. So Blaze Reagan has to do, and I believe he's capable of working really hard to make sure that he's known. He can build on what he's done as a city councilman. Jay Hardaway's been a quiet person in politics. He's well known behind the scene. He was a city councilman, but it's been years since he's held that office. And he left his term early to go work for Jody Arrington. So he will have to figure out a way to get in people's conversation. So to me right now, just in terms of flat out name recognition, it's Liz Case number one, Blaze Reagan number two, and Jay Hardaway number three.
We also have, it's Joshua Allemacher. We're seeing a Democrat, Brittanya Brown, kind of surface on social media, as well as Eddie Pugh. These names, we know one, Eddie Pugh, because of kind of
his involvement with the old city manager.
Yes, and everything that went on, came across with that. When you talk about those guys, and we kind of did a piece with Joshua Allemacher last week on our website and on our broadcast. When you hear these names here, does anybody kind of pop off the page for you for those folks?
This is still so early. They have to go and establish themselves. They have to go and make their own name recognition. So they have to use social media. They have to use whatever appearances they can get so that people start paying attention to them. And that is really, really tough. Other than Eddie Pugh, the other candidates start from basically zero name recognition. And Eddie Pugh is going to have to deal with the fact that he has a reputation out there. I would argue, you use the word activist, rabble-rouser might be another way to put it.
Sure.
And so is that the kind of image that you want for your state representative? So it's going to be tough for all of these candidates to get people to pay attention to
Sure.
them.
Obviously, this is kind of a conservative area.
Right.
We've seen, other Democrats enter this particular election. Is this how much of a factor and influence can a Democrat have in an election here in this particular area?
Right now, uh, not much. And the simple reality is because this is such a Republican district, the most important race is going to be the Republican primary. Then whoever wins the Democratic primary, if there's more than one candidate, will then have the summer and the fall next year to try to stand out and to try to make a difference and try to change the conversation and see if people would even consider voting for a Democrat. The simple problem here is that the Democratic name is not a good name to be associated with in politics in District 71. And that's just not here. It's all over most of West Texas. So you need time to try to change that conversation, and it's possible that it could be done. But if I were a Democrat running right now, I would lay low, try to win the Democratic nomination, let the Republicans fight among themselves, and then emerge with a totally different vision come next spring after the primaries.
Certainly.
It's going to be really hard to do, though.
Yeah. Well, as the Republicans they will battle this out in the primary. March should be very interesting.
Right.
What do you think that they might be, battling out the most when it comes to issues? What do you think we might hear about?
See, that's what I'm struggling with right now. What are the big issues that are out there? Redistricting took over the special session, but it's passed. And then the state legislature is going to be talking. There's some pro-life things in the state legislative agenda. There's some stuff related to the flooding in Kerrville and that area. But that's really about it. There's nothing really sexy right now that's grabbing anybody's attention. So I don't know what they're going to do to try to seize on things. And this goes back to what I talked about before the break, the two Republican parties here. The candidates have a choice. Do they focus on local issues? For example, construction here in the Abilene area, water, power, those kind of things? Or do they focus on statewide or national issues, cultural things that really don't matter that much here in Abilene in this district, but matter statewide? And so my guess is that Liz Case is going to focus on the larger state issues, just like she did 2 years ago. I don't know what Blaze Reagan and Jay Hardaway are going to do.
You have Republicans in power, in the United States Senate and the House of Representatives and the presidency. So it's like, what will get these Republicans riled up? Certainly because they were bringing issues to the table from the Democratic side. But now, what are you going to bring your own problems to the table? Or what are you going to try to create those things like that?
Yeah, exactly. What do you do? And how do you get people to focus on this March election? If you think about this election for District 71, it's going to be at the same time there's going to be a hot Senate race. Okay? Ken Paxton, John Cornyn are going for the Senate. On the Republican side, the Democratic side, we don't know who's going to be there yet. So much attention is going to be focused on that. And I don't know if that attention is going to be able to bleed down to District 71 that much.
Interesting.
So how do the candidates generate excitement? How do you get them to care about things? Do you look at Liz Case, for example, and you say, okay, you were endorsed by Donald Trump a year ago, but then you weren't endorsed by Donald Trump when he endorsed Stan Lambert. So what does that say? And how do Jay Hardaway or Blaze Reagan go and get Donald Trump's endorsement? And does Donald Trump even care about District 71 right now? Or is he concerned about other things? So there's a whole host of things that are at work here, and I'm not sure how you make that happen.
Mm.
You're going to need campaign consultants to do that.
Yeah, that's probably for another conversation then.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Paul Fabrizio, I appreciate your time today, as always.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being here.
Definitely. Well, for Dr. Paul Fabrizio, professor of political science at McMurray University, I'm Manny Diaz. This has been another Sunday conversation right here on Big Country Politics. We'll see you next time. God bless.